the whole time. All right, welcome everyone. This is the first of a 7-part series that that Father John and Greg Abdullah will be presenting to us. This first session is going to be a great session to give us all of those key basics, the things that we need to understand about what the structure of the services are. The next six sessions in their series, which will be every other week. But those next 6 sessions will be 2 on Vespers, 2 on Orthros, and 2 on Liturgy. And it really is going to build on a lot of what we learn and what we talk about tonight. So again, I just want to welcome everybody. I would like to introduce to you the newly ordained Father John El-Masih. Welcome, Father John, and also Greg Abdullah, who will be presenting for us. Just as a reminder, once they start sharing their screen, you'll see their screen, but if you'd like to, when they're not sharing their screen, if you'd like to just see the speaker, in the top right corner of your screen, you have the option of speaker view versus the gallery view. Speaker view will allow you to see the person who's talking only, and it'll switch every time someone else starts to talk. But the benefit to that is that you can actually see them, and you're not looking at those tiny little boxes. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Father John.
Good evening, everyone. Let's first start with just a small prayer, short prayer. Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. O Heavenly King, comforted the Spirit of truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell in us and cleanse us from every stain and save our souls, O gracious Lord. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. So good evening again. Welcome to our first, basically, a session of the 7-session series. We are actually, basically, we decided to offer something like this because we realized, especially during the SMIs, that people have questions about like basic structure of services. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to offer these kind of like basic introduction, basically like an introduction to basic services, how these things came to be. It is, I would say it's important to know, especially for a lot of us here that are, chanters and choir directors and choir members. It is very important for us to know how to chant, but it's also important to us to know what to chant, not like just, we have basically the liturgical guide that it's offered by the Archdiocese for almost every service that we need, it's a great blessing, don't get me wrong. It is definitely a great tool. But on the other hand, it is a double-edged sword because it just, we say, I'll fish for you or something. I'll just, don't worry, I'll just bring you the fish. But the problem, it's not only the liturgical guide does not only fish the fish for you, it actually fish the fish, cleans the fish, prep the fish, and add the spices to the fish, and cooks the fish, and does everything. You only have literally just even like helps you open your mouth. You just have to just like chew it. That's all you have to do. Just, so it is good, but it's also, it has this, if I can say, this bad side that it makes people like, yeah, I'll just have everything ready. And I will say just a short story. One time I was back when I was traveling with His Eminence, before even I was ordained as a deacon, we were at a church, and we basically, beginning of Orthros, and the chanter started chanting God is the Lord in tone 5. So God is the Lord, tone 5, and then, of course, you'll have to sing Let Us Believers. And then, he sang the Let Us Believers, and then he said, glory to the Father, and to the Son, to the Holy Spirit. He repeated it, both now and ever, and unto ages of ages, amen. And he went, the mystery which was hidden from everlasting and was unknown of the angels. And I kind of like looked at him and said, oh, stop, why are you singing this one? And he says, well, that's what's written in the liturgical guide. And I was like, well, it's wrong, it must be a typo. He's like, how come it's a typo? It's from the Archdiocese. This, we have this document, from the Archdiocese. I was like, well, it happened that it's, probably somebody when he was making the copy pasting just forgot that part, forget to, make the copy paste. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not saying something wrong, God forbid, like, or how do you say it, heretical, but that's not what you're supposed to do, So from these, things that happen, and then what we hear from comments from people, we try to, we start, teaching at least the basic stuff, basic structure. What is a liturgical year? What are the, tonight, God willing, we will talk more about the liturgical year, and it's such a fitting thing to start on September 1st, actually the first day of the ecclesiastical year. And then we will go into some structure of the daily services, and then basically few things about the books that we use in the liturgical basically services, that actually when we make the liturgical guide, what are the books that actually we look into to basically put together the service that we have. Sorry if I took too long, but I just wanted to say these things. And Greg, I don't know if Greg wants to also say something also to start with.
Hi, I'm Greg. I am extremely excited to be here with you all. And like Father John said, where this is coming from, even the title, the who, what, where, when, and why, this is not about how. This is not something that we're looking at how to sing, how to chant. We're talking about literally, why are these services put together the way that they are? So that when we've all been in that moment where we've encountered something that maybe seems or doesn't look like it's what we're supposed to be doing, what are we going to do? Or what would happen in the scenario where your parish priest comes to you and says, I would like to do liturgy on August 29th for the feast of the prophet, the beheading of John the Baptist. What happens if you go to the liturgical guide and there's nothing there? Are you able to put that service together? Are you able to know where to even start to look? We're going to look mainly at the overview of where you would find all of that stuff, where you would find that information, and how you would be able to really get to understand kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff. We're not going to go super in depth, and if at any point we and by we I mean me, starts to get a little bit too nerdy, because I really get excited about these things, Father John is here to kind of rein me back in and stop me from going overboard with things.
Same with you.
But this is something that really is near and dear to both of our hearts, and we're very excited to be able to share with you whatever it is we have that we're able to offer. So with that being said, as Father John mentioned, the way that we start to look at the liturgical year needs to start with, what is the structure of the liturgical year? How does the liturgical year function, and what's going on? As he said, it begins on September 1st, which is today. Happy New Year. I'm sure you all had your beautiful New Year's Eve parties last night and had a great time, and ends on August 31st. Throughout that year, we have certain bumps along the road that give us kind of a pacing for how the church has structured her year, for how the church structures, what are those important dates? Just like in our civil calendars, we have those very important dates that we keep, that, the banking holidays, if you will, the days that when you're in school, are the days that are days off, when you are out of school that you wish are still days off. How does the church structure her year, and what does it look like? And it begins first and foremost with the 12 major feasts. Beginning on September 8th, we have the Nativity of the Theotokos. Then we have September 14th, the Feast of the Cross. Then we have the presentation of the Theotokos in the temple on November 21st. We have December 25th, the Feast of the Nativity of Christ. We have January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany. February 2nd, the presentation of Christ in the temple. March 25th, the Annunciation. And then we have this very large gap. And then we get to August 6th, the Transfiguration, August 15th, the Dormition. That gap starts to get filled in when we look at, so these are what we call the fixed feasts. These are the feasts where that is what they are every day of the year, no matter what. We also have what we call the movable feasts, those days that are beginning with the Triodian period, the beginning of Lent. They include Lent, Palm Sunday, Pascha, Ascension, and Pentecost. And we're going to get a little bit more into why it's like that as we go on. But those are the movable feasts versus the fixed feasts. And the year is comprised and really set apart, set aside, and structured with all of these bumps along the road. Some of them are, I don't want to say bigger holidays than others, but some of them we will say kind of take precedence over other feasts and have different classifications. And we'll get into that when we get towards the end, when we talk about the Typicon and how things really are all put together. Of course, everything is functioned around and set around Pascha, Pascha being the Feast of Feasts, the Holy Day of Holy Days. And even within the liturgical year itself, you know, Pascha, when it was early on in the church, its own fixed feast, the rest of the liturgical year started to move along certain bumps based on that. As you can see within those dates, first and foremost, we have that cycle that Pascha kind of sets apart, that within the overarching year, we've got little bumps along the road that give us little pacing and show us different things about how the year is really structured, teaching us something, teaching us that Pascha is all important. We don't just start Pascha on the day of Pascha. You know, not that it is more important than the nativity of the Theotokos, but the Paschal period is an entire period of the church, while the nativity has its forefeast and its leave taking, and this much shorter period. Pascha begins with Great Lent, the beginning of the Triodian during the weekend of the Publican and the Pharisee, when we begin to open this book that starts that whole Paschal cycle that has all of the pre-Lenten Sundays, has all of the Lenten Sundays, includes the Palm Sunday and the raising of Lazarus, includes Pascha itself, and then goes all the way until the Sunday after Pentecost, which is the Sunday of All Saints. And this is the entirety of that Paschal cycle. Because, as we looked at during the virtual SMI, the Nativity in many ways is seen through the lens of this Pascha. The Nativity has its own cycle that is mirrored much like Pascha's, in the same way, where it begins with the presentation of the Theotokos in the temple, which is the very first feast that we have within Advent, and ends in that period of the after feast, the excitement, the joy, all the way goes into the presentation of Christ in the temple, and kind of encapsulates all of that focus on the nativity, that joy that we see within the nativity, and that joy that we have with Christ's incarnation. But because so much of the language about the church talks about the church as the bride, and Christ being the bridegroom, and us being the joined to Christ through these liturgical feasts, it's actually pretty interesting that, and to note that throughout the entirety of the year, we encompass the bride of God life within the liturgical year of the church, beginning with the nativity of the Theotokos, and the last major feast being her Dormition. And I think this is also done intentionally as a way to give us kind of a certain pacing to understand how the year goes. You know, we have these when you're a student, you have the school year, and you have a very specific schedule that goes on, because as human beings, we're pretty much designed to have that pacing, to have that kind of, I don't know what the right word is, help me out here, Abuna, but have that kind of structure. And the school year gives us that structure in our lives. Well, before it was even cool to do it at school, the church was giving us that structure to our lives, was giving us that pacing, was showing us what was going on by having all of these bumps along the road, these little arcs that happen within the life of the church throughout the entirety of the year, showing us and guiding us in these kind of big arches, how our life is structured. Now, Father John will talk about how the day is structured so that within the big arches, we have those very specific moments.
First, before I start, there's a reason why we asked you, to do these things. You're the man in these things.
I love this stuff, but we're a good team, Abuna.
I'll make, God bless you. That's, thank God, thank God we have people, like you to, explain things like this. I would never be able to explain them like this. So after Greg basically gave us an overview of the whole calendar, from September 1st to the August 31st, we're just going to look now on every day. What usually happen on a liturgical day? Same thing that we, for the liturgical year, our New Year's actually does not start like the commercial. Actually, Sayyidina on Sunday mentioned, he says the commercial New Year of January 1st. So basically, the commercial New Year's starts on January 1st, but our liturgical year, our Christian liturgical year, starts on September 1st. And the same kind of concept, our day, our liturgical day does not start with like the morning, or like at 9 a.m. when everybody has to be at work, or whatever, 8 a.m. in the morning. Actually, in the Orthodox Church, the day starts actually with the Vesper Service. The Vesper Service is the first liturgical service in the liturgical day of the church. So Vesper Service, basically meaning of it, in Greek they use the word esperinon, which is basically means the evening. And it's basically right around the dusk. So when you say a gladsome light, technically, so it's the time when the sun is going down, the sun, S-U-N, we kind of now asking the sun, the S-O-N, to help us during the night and enlighten our day, basically. So the theme of this service, the Vesper service, it's basically creation and glorification of God. Creation, if you, of course, the one of the main parts of the Vesper service is Psalm 103, which basically we would always, read. Bright week, actually, once we go into Vespers, I'll have these more in depth, basically. But basically, Psalm 103 is a major component of the Vesper service. And because it talks about creation, about the animals and the humans and all of these things, how they came to be and how they live, basically the theme of Vespers is creation and the glorification of God. Okay, the next service that we basically that comes in the liturgical day is the Compline service. Compline, either the small Compline or the Great Compline. Usually, Great Compline is reserved for Lent. As we know, during Lent, once Lent starts, we started using the Great Compline service. But outside of Lent, we can do Compline every day. It's the lesser service of the Great Compline that we usually have during Lent. Compline service, it's usually after supper, like basically right before you go to bed. The theme of it is like sleep and Christ in Hades. Asleep, asking a lot of the prayers, if you read the Psalms and the, well, not actually the Psalms, just the prayers that the priest has to read, or actually if you're doing the Compline service at home, they talk about how asking God to keep us, even during the night, watchful to clean our thoughts, not to get any bad thoughts, and to have actually to wake up in the morning healthy and not like somehow, God forbid, we die at night. That's the second compliance service, the second service of the liturgical day. Vespers and Compline, I can say that you can actually do them at home. You'll see that all these services, before I forget, I'll mention this, all these services, yes, you can do them in the church, and the priest, can be present, but actually these services, you can actually do them while you're at home. You don't need to have the priest. I'm not saying don't go to church now because, God forbid, at least I'm on record, I'm not saying this, but those type of services actually allow us to basically, we can chant them or read them while we're at home. There will be different, few little things to do when you're singing, when you're doing these services at home versus when you actually doing them in the church with the priest. The third liturgical service of our liturgical day is the midnight service. And the meaning, of course, even in Greek, it has the meaning, basically the midnight service, literally translate this. The theme of it is judgment, Christ coming in the middle of the night, Christ in Gethsemane. What is the, there is a important hymn that we sing 5 times a year that is actually has the word midnight. You guessed it. The bridegroom apolitikio, the bridegroom hymn. Now I'm like blocking off. Behold, the bridegroom cometh at midnight. Yes, thank you, Greg. And basically, why? Because technically, the middle of the night where you're like, very in deep sleep. And here comes basically, even when you're this, be watchful. Don't get too comfortable sleeping, because make sure, you never know when Christ is coming. And when he comes, you'd better be ready in a way. So when we read those, the prayers that read in the midnight service, we get this kind of language of judgment and how Christ is coming in the middle of the night, in the Christ in the Gethsemane, the temptations, and all of these things, basically. All right. The fourth, Greg, you can always jump in, please. Can always jump in if there's something that I, missed or you really want to add and you think it's important, please. The fourth liturgical service is the Orthros service. Orthros service, which means morning, and it's usually done at dawn, technically before the light is out. Technically, if you really want to time it how it should be, you'll when you're saying glory to thee who has shown us the light, it's basically that's the time when the sun should be coming out. So you should start the service. Orthros technically starts earlier, like an hour or an hour and 10 minutes earlier than that, knowing when the sunrise is. Of course, the main theme of it is light. We've like in the beginning of it and the end of it, we have this, the hymns that talk about the light. God is the Lord. And then, of course, with the doxology at the end, when we have during the Orthros service or the Matin service during Lent, we don't have God is the Lord, but we have other hymns that actually they're called the hymns of light, which something we will touch base on, in our session on the Orthros service and Lenten Orthros service. The next liturgical service is the first hour. First hour is 7 a.m. usually, 7 a.m. 7 a.m. 6 or 7. It's I mean, people in a way, say 6 or 7. Anyway, it's going to be, it's not 1 hour, it's okay. Anyway, nobody's, I mean, very few people are going to wake up at 7 to do it anyway. But first hour is 7 a.m. and the theme of it is Christ before Pilate. The third hour is at 9 a.m. and it's Pilate's judgment, descent of Holy Spirit at Pentecost. And actually, I will call you, like, I don't want to explain a lot on these things, but now you have kind of what the theme is. It would be nice to go back and read those, the Psalms. I mean, the first hour and third hour and sixth and ninth hour, they're like a 10, 15 minute, not even, at least ninth hour is a little bit longer, but the other ones actually are short enough. You can read them and you get this kind of theme. There's set psalms and set prayers that you basically sing. Third hour is around the 9 a.m. Pilate's judgment, descent of Holy Spirit at Pentecost. The sixth hour is noon, and of course it's Christ's crucifixion, because we know through the tradition, holy tradition, that Christ was crucified around noon at the sixth hour, and of course according to the scriptures. And then the ninth hour, 3 p.m. is Christ's death. And so you see, basically, ninth hours should be done around 3 p.m. And then Vespers is before, the sun is down. So when a gladsome light, like I said, the sun goes down and we start basically celebrating, or glance of light, talking, about Christ, the Son. So you'll see, like, basically our day is full of these services. I mean, we hear Islam like, oh, they pray 5 times a day and stuff, but technically us Christians, if we really want to be as, I can dare to say, if we're going to be as committed as Muslims, we don't only have 5, services. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 services every day. And there's something I haven't talked about yet, and I'll come to it in a second. We have actually 8 services. Now, it is common in our parishes to have, Vespers, Orthros, and we'll talk about it in a second, the Divine Liturgy. And then during Lent, we add Compline. Or on a couple days a year, we add the hours. And Greg spoke about the royal hours in the virtual SMI, and he spoke for the teens about him, but I think we should also offer it for the adults too. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to learn more about these things. But then now you ask, like, where's the Divine Liturgy? Actually, the Divine Liturgy is something special. It's like, if I can say, the icing on the cake. Technically, it's called to be done after the Orthros service. Basically, you insert it after the Orthros service, but the liturgy can be done anytime, and you don't have to do anything before it. But we do Orthros just to shed light more and connected to Orthros, where you'll hear a lot about the feast celebrated. So you'll listen more specific about that feast. Because in the liturgy, 80% of it is the same, regardless what day you celebrated. That's why technically a liturgy is not part of the liturgical day. It's just, like I said, it's like the icing on the cake in a way, if I can use that, which is, and again, I mean, we can do it anytime. Usually we do it in the morning because we want people, to, when they have communion, to be the first thing that comes to their mouth. So we usually do it in the morning, but honestly, there's no specific time for the liturgy, as long as you're prepared for it mentally, spiritually, and physically. So not like you just had, a few burgers and then you went, to church to have communion, nor like we want people to starve to death before they have to go, communion. Especially we live now in a world that we we work, we have to work, and we all have our daily things to take care of. That's why those services, those 8 services, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the liturgy, the 9th one that can be offered every day, actually, usually you see it done more in monasteries and convents, where they maintain this kind of a cycle of the liturgical. Greg, anything you want to add? Anything
No, in some practices, some of these services do get combined. Some other, you might see, especially if there's an OCA parish nearby, something they call all night vigil, which is very different than kind of the Byzantine practice of all night vigil, which would do basically all of the services from Vespers all the way through the Divine Liturgy in one shot over the course of like 5 hours or so. In the OCA, the all-night vigil is a combination of Vespers, Orthros, and the first hour, and is typically done on Saturday night rather than having Orthros on Sunday morning, and then they begin just with the liturgy. You might also see during Lent, some places will do, also coming from Slavic practice, the 9th hour, just before they do the pre-sanctified Divine Liturgy for that day. So these are things you might see, but this is what Father John has presented is the structure of the day. These other things are, we make accommodations because we're not living in monasteries. Accommodations are made so that people can be at as many services as they can, and sometimes that's how those accommodations get made.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Romana. So where do we get all of the information for how to put these services together? Because, as Father John talked about when talking about the hours, there are those psalms that are fixed and those hymns that are, and readings and prayers that are fixed to those certain services. But there are also services that we see that have a variety of variables that come in. And because of that, the liturgical books are, for our purposes, divided into 2 categories. We have the books that we call the general books, and we have the books that we call the variables. The general books are those books that contain all of those fixed parts of the services, and the variables being those things that shift. And we're going to get into each of the books a little bit more in depth. In general, we have the Orologion, the Evchologion or Arch-Evchologion. You might also see sometimes Hieratikon as another word that gets thrown out with these things. You've got the Apostolos or the Epistle book, and the Evangelion or Gospel book. In the variable section, we've got the Ochdoichos or Paraklitiki, the Meneon, the Triodion, and the Pentecostarian. So looking at the general books, we have the Orologion, which literally means the book of the hours. This book contains the fixed hymns that are chanted for each of the services. This is kind of the chanter or choir director's book. It has all of the things all of the psalms that would be read, like during Orthros. If you were to look at Orthros in the Orologion, it would have all of the God is the Lord. It would have all of the 6 psalms and have everything that was kind of those things that don't ever change service to service. Its companion book is called the Evchologion or Arch-Evchologion because bishops get a special book of their own. That literally means book of prayers. And this contains the portions of the service said by the deacons, priests, or bishops. So when you pick up kind of our red service book that we have in the Antiochian Archdiocese, it's a combination of these 2 books, bringing together the fixed hymns of the Orologion as well as the prayers and portions of the service that would be said by the deacons, priests, and bishops that would be found in the Evchologion or Arch-Evchologion. Next, We also have the general books. We have the apostolos, which is the epistle book. This word apostolos literally means the apostle. And in it, it contains epistle readings read throughout the entire year. This epistle book is divided up into different sections based on those variable books so that we see what we need to read in sequence throughout the rest of the year. So it will mainly contain all of the epistle readings for Sundays, but it also has a section that is called a Manean section, which has the monthly day by day readings for those different various feasts, as we'll hear from Father John what the Maneon is in a moment. It also has a section called the Triodion, which has all of the readings for the period of the Lenten period, and a Pentecostarian reading section, which has all of the readings that we would find during the Pentecostarian. We also have the Gospel book, or Evangelion, which literally means book of good news. And this contains the gospel readings read throughout the year and is divided up in the same way as the apostolos, or the epistle book. Are you still with us, Abuna?
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Oh,
I'm just like, I think you're right. I apologize. I think we were supposed to go back and forth, right? Just
sorry about this, guys. There's every so often, when you do something like this, there's always going to be one or two little snafus. So we apologize for our little snafu. You'll hear less from me now, and Abuna will talk about the variable books.
yeah. Now I got stuck with all of them. I was okay. One of the first variable book that it's actually basically, I can call it the backbone of our liturgical services. It's called the Oktoikos. Literally the book of 8 tones, if I can say, I can call it. It has another name that's called the Paraklitiki. It's a Greek name, but basically translates to the Comforter, if I can say. Actually, it is the Comforter. This Oktoikos, like I said, it's the backbone of our liturgical services. Literally book of the 8 tones, the Comforter, and contains hymns organized by mode for each day of the week. So, we have the system of 8 tones in the Byzantine, in our Orthodox Church. Tone 1, tone 2, tone 3, tone 4, tone 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, on Sunday, we were in tone 3. I don't want to put like 2 hands there. Tone 3. So this whole week now, yesterday, today, tomorrow, every time we're doing chanting any of the hymns, the services that I mentioned, especially Vespers and Orthros, the main hymn will be in tone 3. Unless there's another major feast happening, and we can talk about it when we get to the Mineon. And as we know, we probably should have, I just now came to my mind, we should have added that every day is dedicated in this book, in the Oktoikos book, to a saint or an event. We always, if you read, when you look at this book, the Oktoikos, and you look at Monday of tone 1, let's say, the hymns of Monday in tone 1, in Vespers and Orthros, are going to be a lot about the angels, those hymns. On Tuesday, it will be for St. John the Baptist. On Wednesday, it will be, let's say, like I said, on this past Sunday was tone 3. We'll have hymns in tone 3 that talk about, if it's Tuesday, today is Tuesday, if you did Orthros this morning, you would have heard a lot about St. John the Baptist and the forerunner. But of course, remember, the liturgical day starts at night. So Monday night Vespers, if you're doing a Monday night Vespers, you are going to hear about these, about the Tuesday, which is the theme of Saint John the Baptist. Wednesday is for the Theotokos and the crucifixion. Thursday is for the apostles and Saint Nicholas. Friday is also for the Theotokos and the crucifixion. And Saturday is for the dead, basically, or the departed, if I can say. Okay. Greg, can you go back one?
I did.
Oh, sorry. I'm just like deleted you. That's why, my fault. So the Octoikos is this. I'm gonna. I don't have the book.
So he froze for a minute. He's out in the countryside in Virginia, so sometimes his Wi-Fi connection cuts in and out. We don't actually have a copy of the Octoikos with us here to share, but basically the way that it's set up is it is divided literally by tone and then goes each day of the week. And then when you get to Sunday, after Friday's celebration of or commemoration of the Theotokos as well as the cross, Saturday we commemorate the departed, and many of the hymns are dealing with the departed as a commemoration of that. That's why when we do celebrate them during Lent, and right before Pentecost, we have those soul Saturdays, because Saturday is that day in the Octoikos that is dealing with the departed. And then Sunday, we commemorate every day of the week, as we all know, the resurrection, which is why we see the Troparion of the resurrection every week during Sunday in a different mode. Because at Saturday night Vespers, the mode of the week shifts, because Sunday is the day that the week begins in the church, where the mode will shift on Saturday night Vespers into the following mode. So you'll see Lord, I Have Cried in all of these different modes based on what are the different hymns. And we'll talk about that when we start getting into Vespers and when we get into Vespers and Orthros as well, and we start looking at the different hymns specifically. Does that make sense, Chris? Help me out. Is that clear? Good.
Yeah, I think that was very clear.
Awesome. So moving on, these hymns are for our daily cycle. We also have the Menaean, which literally means book of the month. And it's not like it's a book of the month club, like where every month you're going to get a new book, but it literally means book of the month, in the sense that there are typically a set of 12 books, and each of these 12 books contains hymns for the various feasts and saints that are celebrated each day of each month. So for example, if you look on September 1st, you'll see the Feast of the Indiction that is celebrated, the beginning of the year. And then if you look on September 8th, you'll see hymns for the Feast of the Nativity of the Theotokos, and September 14th for the Cross, and September 24th for Saint Thecla. And every single day of the week, these hymns are there for a different commemoration of a different saint. Because different saints are ranked, for lack of a better term, differently, you might see the way that the Menaean and the Octoikos get put together change. But by and large, this Octoikos and this Menaean go together for 90% of the year. I think 90 is a good number to use. 90% of the year, we're using either the Octoikos for the commemoration of the day, and the Menaean for the commemoration of the specific day of that month. And the way that the Menaean comes about, Abuna, are you back with us?
Oh, I am. Oh, I've been back, but I enjoy listening to you. Believe me.
Yeah, Baye, come on. So when the way that the Menaean typically has come to be is based on different local commemorations. So in the early days, and even still today, you can see like the Church of Russia and the Church of the Church of Moscow and the Church of Constantinople and the Churches of Antioch. each one would have had a different Menaean. There are certain saints that are of special reverence in certain places. Like, for example, the Church of Moscow probably doesn't have St. Joseph of Damascus on their calendar. By comparison, in the Antiochian Archdiocese, we celebrate the feast of St. Raphael on the first Saturday of November every year, according to our Menaean. While the churches of Russia, when they commemorate him on February 27th, which was the day of his repose. So you might see some little nuances and some differences there based on the region or location where the Menaean was developed and how things came to be.
Sure. Greg, I do want to, before we get to the Triodion, I do want to show a picture, basically a PDF of a book, just so people can have like how these books look like, if I can say. So I think, I don't know if I share, let's see if I can share. I'm going to share my screen. I think people are able to see my screen. So we're looking here at actually the book of Menaeon of September, of the month of September. Basically the way, can you guys see the screen?
We're not seeing it. There
Okay,
it is.
There it goes.
Okay, it's coming up. Good. So what we're looking at is actually, this is the PDF basically file, but it is exactly how you see it in the book. Just imagine this is just a page in a book. And this is the book of the Menaeon of basically of the month of September. Here I was looking at September 4th. Of course, this basically what you see in here is the same structure that you see in the Menaeon when it was originally written in Greek, let's say. It's the same structure. So when you open the book, usually it tells you September 4th, who is usually commemorated. The holy, September 4th, the holy God seer Moses, the prophet, and Aaron, his brother, the holy hieromartyr Babylos. And then it will tell you if there are any notes. Here we see, there's a note following the typikon, yada, yada, yada. But here's basically what you see. It will always tell you, it will start right away with the first service. Here's the Vesper Service. In the Vesper Service, it says, it gives you the instruction. After the proemial psalm, which is Psalm 103, or you're going to chant, blessed is the man. Then, for Lord I have cried, allow 6 verses and chant the following stichira. And it would tell you of the prophet, and then of the hieromartyr, Babylos, and it will list them to you. But like we said, the first book that we use is the Orologion, the Octoikos, not the Orologion, my fault. The Octoikos has also the same. There's a book that kind of like says the same thing, but it's instead of September 4th, it will tell you Monday of Ton 1. The next page or a few pages later, Tuesday of Ton 1. And here's the instructions of it. So in Vespers, you will have sets of hymns, a set of hymns. And at some take, because there's a rule on a daily Vespers. If you're in a doing a daily Vesper service, you're going to sing 6 hymns after Lord I've cried. The total is 6 hymns, regardless for who you're going to, either all from the Octoikos, all from the Neon, depending on the rank of the saint. You're going to sing 6 hymns. A lot of times, if it's not a major saint, you'll have to sing the 3 from Octoikos. If let's say Vespers was yesterday, let's say tonight, Tuesday of Ton 3, you're going to sing the 3 hymns from the book of Octoikos for Tuesday of the 3rd mode, and then the next 3, they're going to be from the Menaeon, and usually there are basically the book of the Typikon tells you which saint you're going to use the next 3. Is it for the prophet or for the hieromartyr? So in those books that actually, and we probably should mention his name. His name is Peter Seymour, and we've mentioned his name before, but he's the guy who actually puts these services together. He's the one who looks at all these different books, and read the book of rules that tells him, on this, if this day, if this feast falls on this day of the year in this season, this is what you're going to sing for Lord I've cried. This is what you're going to sing for oh Lord, God is the Lord, and all of these things. So here in this book of the Mineon, usually that's the structure. If there are Old Testament readings, the book will provide you with those Old Testament, readings. Peter Seymour will come and then basically highlight the reading is from the book of Acts, or the highlight and copy paste in the right order. And then here's for the entreaty. And then we have a section that's called the Aposticha. All of these we'll get to, but I'm just trying to show you what one of these books, how they look like. And they usually have the same structure, all kind of like the same structure. First for Vespers, and then for Orthros, you'll see. And then here at the dismissal, and then you see this here. I mean, I'm sure I'm a little bit delayed, but then it says here,
lagging a little bit, Abuna.
Opa. That's the
There
price.
it goes.
That's the price we pay when we live in the middle of nowhere in Virginia, and our internet is through satellite. And it's an overcast here tonight. So God willing, we're working on this, but just to show, God wants to show me nothing is perfect, which is, yes, I learned that lesson, but he likes to remind us always. Anyway, so here it says, after the first reading from the Psalter, the following sessional hymns, after, for basically what's called the Kathismata, here are the hymns that you need to sing. Here's the canon, something that we stopped basically using in our churches, many years ago. Here's the canon. Here's, in 1 second, we're gonna come, what's called the Kontakion and Ikos that we read every Sunday in every major feast. Here's the Senexarion. On the 4th of this month, we commemorate the Holy Prophet and God Seer. And then all what's called the Exapostilaria for that specific day of September 4th. Then what we need to sing for the praises. For the praises, we allow, it says us for 4 verses, and then what the glory is going to be. What's the both now going to be, and then the doxology. And then actually it tells us even in the liturgy which epistle you're going to read and which gospel you're going to read. And a lot of times also it includes for us what is the communion hymn that you need to use. Okay, and then the next page is September 5th, and kind of the same concept. But again, this is one like how a book actually looks like, and then we take from it those services that you see on the online liturgical guide. Okay.
Hey, Deacon John,
yes, sir.
we had a question from Gerald. I'm just going to ask him to unmute his microphone and ask it. Gerald.
Sure.
Thank you. I was just curious. I had two quick questions. One was who is the person at the Archdiocese who puts together the services that actually get posted online, and is he a good person to reach out to if we have a question?
Sure. His name, like I mentioned, Gerald, his name is Subdeacon Peter Seymour, Samore. There is an email, I think it's olg@antiochian.org, online liturgical guide at antiochian.org. He's the one, basically the brain behind what we do. I'm sure he's usually very good, like answering any question you might have, but he's the one who has these books and put them all together for us. Of course, he follows specific directions, either, of course, from the Typicon that usually the Antiochian Patriarchate follows. And Greg has mentioned before how you might have, different celebrations here and there from, one jurisdiction to another, or from even one patriarchate to another. So these things, there basically has some kind, like he has guidelines to follow. But of course, he's the guy who has, any questions you have, and he's very nice. He'll gladly answer your question, and God willing, we're gonna get him to do things like this and offer actually a class, like basically on what he does and how he does things too. Good?
So one quick follow-up question on,
Sure.
and I know that maybe this is way too early, and you may get to this when you get to how to decipher the Typicon.
Mhm.
But as a general rule, on a typical day with a simple service, how do you
Mhm.
know which book takes precedence?
Okay, that's a good question, Gerald. Well, let's put it this way. Greg also mentioned that, and we can, I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much we can talk about, and hopefully this just to get you, like just like the first step. But we do have, usually depending on the rank of the saint. If it's, about the Theotokos, well, before I say this, the major person in the end and always gets precedent is hymns for Christ. Hymns for Christ, for sure. Then you have hymns for the Theotokos. Then let's say St. John the Baptist, people like St. John the Baptist, and then people like St. John Chrysostom, St. Nicholas, St. Demetrius, St. Peter and Paul, and stuff like this. But during just the daily ones, depending on the rank of the saints, you might definitely, whenever, let's say you have a saint that is not, again, I don't know it's what like a good word to use other than with a lesser rank, like a rank, much lesser rank, have things from the Oktoikos chanted for Christ, and then you add a few things here and there for him. But usually, if it's like they're, I think, ranked like 5 ranks. So if you're 5 or 4, you basically barely get anything mentioned about you, about that saint, and mainly actually hymns about Christ or whoever is celebrated during that the day of the week. So if it's a Monday, you'll have more hymns about the angels and their relationship with Christ, or then on Tuesday you'll have more about St. John the Baptist, and then once in a while you'll get something small for that saint. But there are rules for all of these things, basically. It's not like, definitely, and I hope people know that, it is not something like Peter wakes up one day and he feels today he likes St. John the Baptist and he wants to honor him with a couple extra hymns. The next day he has some issues. He doesn't like the life of Saint Basil and is like, well, I'm not going to put enough hymns for it, or I'm just going to mention a couple of hymns for him or something. There's always like guidelines or rules that we have to follow. I mean, you'll have a few things that you can get away with, or not get away, like you might do this a little bit different, like add a hymn here or deduct a hymn here,
Right.
but in the end, you're still in a kind of like in a box that you should not be very far away from it. Is that clear, Gerald?
And at the end of the
Yes,
day, Gerald,
thank you.
and at the end of the day, Gerald, whatever we're doing, we always want to defer to whatever it is that our parish priest is asking for us to do. They might have specific things that they want to do. For example, I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have relics of Saint Thecla in the altar. So sometimes we might add her troparion in at on her feast day, where, I mean, Saint Thecla is a bad example because she's a high enough ranking of a saint, but we might sing her troparion on her feast day if it wasn't normally called for, because she has special veneration here in our parish. So we always want to defer to our parish priests with these things, and be in dialogue with them. We never want to show up for a service and they're finding out what we're doing for the service the same times that we are, where we're just picking and choosing what we want. There's typically a guideline. And Bishop Basil also has some resources on dawama.org that has a Typicon chart that kind of actually explains a little bit about what how the different services are put together based on different rankings of saints, so that you can, if you have the ranking of saint, you can know what classification they are and how to put that service together.
I just want to just answer a question. So I know April asked, is this HTM's Minayon? Is it available in electronic form? It is the HTM Minayon, but it's not available in electronic form. Only few us, just because we do a lot of work with HTM as the Ethiopian Archdiocese, and we have basically their permission to use, but it's not like something that we can definitely share. Or it's available electronically. Definitely not. Just a few of us who work with the online liturgical guidance stuff, that we do a lot of copy and pasting and stuff instead of just typing from the books. So we had their permission to use, but definitely not for distribution nor for sharing. Okay, I just wanted to make sure from the beginning. But I wanted to share this just to show you. I don't have a better way to show you actually how a book looks like, and I didn't want to show you the one in Greek or in Arabic. It doesn't want to make us won't make it do us any good, and they are the only ones with actually English translation. That they wrote translated all these books. Okay. Is the Minayon available? Oh, Chris, I didn't know that. Well, as a book, to buy the book, basically.
Yeah, I just purchased the books. Like there's
Yes.
12 different books
Yes,
about
yes,
a year ago,
yes.
so they are in print still.
Yes,
And
yes.
they are gorgeous.
Exactly.
I like the way books look, and they are beautifully done.
And that's, they did a lot of work, God bless them in the end. It's definitely, regardless, we're not in communion with them in a way, but that's another topic. But in the end, they're still one of the best translations that they offer. Metered, actually, too, also not only just the translation, but they're metered. Anyway, I can go on a Triodion, so I can redeem you, Greg, of not like,
Well, I want to hear you.
Oh, God. Next book that we're going to talk about is the book called Triodion, literally the book of the three odes. This is exactly three. It's literally three, and odes. Triodion is the book of the three odes. Contains hymns for throughout the Lenten period, from the Sunday of the Publican and Pharisee through Holy Saturday morning. Okay, so this book, in a way, if I can say, it will be used instead of the Octoikos, the first book that I talked about before you lost me. And it's not like it actually replaces it. It doesn't replace it more than it actually has the same hymn used in Octoikos. But then, because now we started, Sunday of the Publican and Pharisee, then they add actually hymns for the Publican and Pharisee, and include things for the Publican and Pharisee, or Prodigal Son, or Meat Fair, or Cheese Fair, or Meat Fair, or and then the first Sunday of Lent in each. But basically, it's the Octoikos plus the hymns for the specific Sunday, or the specific Sunday of during Lent, or during the first period of Triodion, and then the preparation basically before Lent, those 4 Sundays before Lent, then Holy Week, up to including Holy Saturday morning. Okay, and again, it's kind of the same concept that I showed you in the book of the Minayon. Here's what you need to do in Vesper. Here's what those hymns, the variables in Vespers. Here are the hymns in Orthros. Here are like the communion hymn, or some other things here and there like this. Okay, that's basically the Triodion book. Greg, you want to add something for Triodion?
No, that's perfect.
Okay, and then the Pentecostarion, literally book of Pentecost, or basically, and Pentecost means 50, so the book of 50, although if I'm not mistaken, it's actually not 50 days. It has more than the book. It's not about the 50, because it has more than 50 days in it, and I'll tell you exactly why. It contains the hymns throughout the Paschal period, from the Sunday of Pascha through the Sunday of All Saints. Again, before the Sunday of Pascha, what we're going to do at night, like on right after the rush, like when we start going out, we take the light from the priest and we go out. That's basically when we start. Okay, that's basically when we start using the Pentecostarion till, you know, the through the whole Paschal period till Pentecost and the Sunday after Pentecost. Okay, which is the Sunday of All Saints. Again, the Pentecostarion, I would say the same concept as the Triodion. It is like basically Pentecostarion equals, if I can say mathematically, Octoikos plus the specific hymns added to the ones basically related to Thomas Sunday, Mare-bearing Sunday, Paralytic Sunday, you know, a Samaritan Sunday, Blind Man Sunday, Ascension, the Fathers, and yada yada. Okay, so that's basically the book of the Pentecostarian. Any questions? We're good. We keep going.
I think we keep going.
Sure.
So like Father was mentioning, sometimes you might have 3 or 4 books that you're trying to put together services for. You know, when you're looking at everything, it can be very confusing. You know, on a Sunday during the period of the Triodion, you need to put together the Octoikos, the Triodion, and the Menean. That's that, plus all the other stuff. And how do we do the services? Because now you're throwing in things like on the Sunday of the Cross, how are we going to do this procession, and how are we going to do that? And in her wisdom, the church gives us a book called the Typikon. And we've referenced the Typikon for a while. The Typikon is basically a guidebook. It talks about how the services are celebrated, and it also talks about how the services are put together. And this Typikon that we have today is passed down from us and comes from the 2 primary sources being the Sabbaitic Typikon, which literally means the Typikon from Mar Sabbas Monastery in Palestine from around the 7th century, with specific regard to how services are celebrated. This is where, you know, a lot of historians are able to go back and see and trace how does our service structure today match up, and where is that development that has happened. And it comes typically from that Typikon, as well as the Typikon of the great church. How was the practice being followed in the great city of Constantinople? And you have in this monastic practice as well as city practice, and the 2 worships coming together. This is what the side profile of a Typikon looks like. I intentionally included one that is in Greek because there is one that is in English that was done by Bishop Dimitri, but typically it was done at a point when things were followed a little bit differently in our archdiocese, and Father John can speak a little bit more on that. It basically puts together and says to you, on September 1st, you will do X amount of readings from the Octoikos, X amount of readings from the Meneam, X amount of the glory will look like this, and it gives you an outline for the entire service for Vespers, Orthros, as well as Divine Liturgy, showing you exactly how you're going to put everything together, which should answer some of your questions from earlier, sir, as well. Gerald, I think you had some questions earlier about how these things get matched. Can you give a little word about the Typikon Abuna?
Sure. So basically, it literally means order, if I can say, order, and it's literally when you open the book in Greek, or you know, there's one in Arabic. Patriarch of Antioch releases basically one every year, just to make sure that we're following the same, you know. But anyway, when you open it, it literally will say, it starts usually an overview of Vesper Service, like in Vespers, you know, whenever you have a major feast of Christ, nothing is chanted for the resurrection. If it falls on a Sunday, everything should be for the feast. If it's a feast of the Theotokos that falls on a Sunday, make sure you do for Vespers 3 hymns or 4 hymns for Sunday for resurrection, 6 hymns for the Theotokos, 2 hymns here, 1 hymn here. This is basically what it does. The book tells you. Then when you get to like, oh, here's September 1st. Oh, September 1st falls on a Sunday. It's a major feast. Okay, you're gonna sing, you know, instead of, you know, for Vespers, here's what you're doing for God is the Lord. You're gonna sing, let's say the resurrectional hymn, then the hymn for for the indiction, then a Theotokion, different. Or here's the most complicated, actually the most complicated feast that we have in the church. People might say like, what's so complicated in it? But it's the feast of Annunciation, March 25th. The Feast of Annunciation is the most complicated feast we have in the church. In what way? Because depending on when it falls, because March 25th, it's always March 25th. But like it might be a week before Pascha, it might be 2 months before Pascha, So depending on where it falls, this whole thing of like around it, has to be put in a way to give respect to everything, to March 25th, the feast, such an important feast in the church, but we don't want to deviate a lot and forget that we're outside of Lent, or forget that we're still in Lent. So we have to, also make sure that we're still, doing the Lenten prayers. And also depending on like how about if it falls on the third Sunday of Lent? March 25th happened before and fell on the third Sunday with the commemoration of the cross, and then there's a procession. Would you do the procession, or would you not do it? Or okay, how many hymns for the resurrection, or how many hymns for the cross, or how many hymns for the Annunciation? All of this book comes and tells you, okay, there are I think 25 cases, or 27 cases if I'm not mistaken, for Annunciation. Will basically tell you, one, if Annunciation falls on Sunday of the first week of Lent, yada 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 yada. If it falls on the Monday and Tuesday of the first week of Lent, here you go, all your instruction, what to do, what to chant, and what not to chant. Here's if it falls on the second week, on the third week, and tell you something, which it does never happens now with the new calendar we have. There's also a case that it happened now, it would still happen with the old calendar. Annunciation can fall on Pascha. But now with the new calendar, the way we mix, the new calendar with basically our old way of calculating Pascha, this never happened. But also gives you all these kind of different options, all these different options of what to do for for the Annunciation. So this book is very important. Actually, I'm trying to like advertise for it, but there's a book that I really fell in love with about the Typicon, and kind of like understand the history, how these things came, and like how they started deciding which one, what you need to do, how many hymns for this and how many hymns for that. It's called the Typicon Decoded, a book called the Typicon Decoded. His name is Archimandrite Job. Help me, Greg. If you know it. Getcha. It's a beautiful book.
He's a bishop in Paris that
he's a
wrote
bishop
that book. Yeah, and it's available through SVS Press.
Yes. I think that's where I got it from. People who are interested to like learn the history of stuff, how they came to be, like when this feast started, to take place, and then how much it influenced the other services and stuff like this. It's actually a beautiful book to. Okay, I am not familiar with Order of Divine Services by Fukula, or is it too Russian? Maybe because I don't think it's more Russian. Maybe Gerald asked. I'm not familiar, also either with it. But anyway, that's basically the Typicon, this book of the Typicon. So Peter, when he's, puts Peter Seymour, Subdeacon Peter Seymour, when he sits, to put the services, that's what he relies on. He relies on books, Typicon from Bishop Dimitri's one. Although, like Greg says, we kind of like started using a little bit different practices of what he did, just because the Patriarchate in general changed a few of their practice. And then he'll look at, the Typicon Decoded. He'll look at other resources to help him put the services together. But guess what? I mean, in a way, after doing it for so many years, he's, now he's like basically have a lot of these things memorized, basically. So he'll know if you tell him like, oh, what happened if Annunciation falls on the second Sunday of Lent? He'll be like, oh, no problem. here's what you have to do, tick, 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 tick. And then you look at the book and he's exactly what he just got so much used to it. He's been doing it for the last probably 15, 20 years.
And that's another thing to answer your earlier question, Gerald. The more that you get used to doing these things, and the more that you are immersing yourself in these services and how these things get put together, you can look at the Manean, for example, like Father John opened up that book to September 4th, and there were 6 hymns from the Manean. So you kind of have a sense that when you look at the Typicon, it's going to tell you, sing 6 from the Manean. You're not going to have the Octoikos for Lord I Have Cried at that point, just based on what is going on in the Manean. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Abuna. You can, as you're immersing yourself in these things, you start to understand the patterns, and you start to see how it all works, and you start to understand, going back to his earlier story, I'm not supposed to sing the mystery which was hidden right now, even though it tells me to do that on this paper. That must be a typo. I'm going to do what would not be the typo.
And sing, if it's tone 5, Resurrection or Politikion, I'm supposed to sing its own Theotokion in tone 5. There's a specific one, to follow, let us believers, praise and worship, the word. Okay? That's beautiful.
Any other questions on the Typicon? Or this is really the one of the hardest parts, which is why we saved it for the end.
Again, we can talk about each one of these, hours and hours. But in the end of the day, our main goal just to get you to start thinking about these things. Again, there's so much that happens behind the scenes for the liturgical guide. One thing I forgot to mention, the Octoikos, just an FYI thing, the father of the Octoikos and the one who started it, of course, who's considered the father of Byzantine, chant, whom is St. John of Damascus. He's the one basically who started this book. He's the one who put it kind of together, and then saints after him started adding, to him, to this book, and we have a complete one now after all these, hundreds of years. But basically, Saint John of Damascus, who put it, or at least started it, and then other saints contributed and fulfilled it, basically. Yeah, great.
Interesting enough. Do you know which monastery Saint John was the monk at? Mar Sabas in Palestine, where we have one of the primary sources for the modern Typicon. I have a question that was sent to me by George asking, where can you find the Typicon, that it's not available at Boston Monks or through a Google search? That is because there really is not one available in English. Bishop Dimitri put one together and did a translation of an Arabic Typicon at the time. But the way that currently the Patriarch is following things is close, but not exactly the same as that Typicon. I'm not even sure where you would find his Typicon. I don't know if you know, Abuna.
Al-Mutran, I think the website is called Al-Mutran. I just have to look it up.
So we'll put that in the chat. And his Typicon is available for download. But again, with all of these things, just because we have a Typicon in our hands, or just because we have a Manean and a Typicon and an Octoikos and all of these things, none of this putting the services together should just be done on our own without consultation to our priests. Whenever we're doing things, we want to always make sure that we are doing things in consultation with our priests. Thank you, Chris, for putting that in the chat. We want to do things within consultation with our priests, making sure that they know what we're doing, that we're not, it becomes very easy to pick and choose what we want to do and to put services together based on what we prefer. When I was growing up, going to the Antiochian village, everyone sang tone 8 every single day at the chanter's stand. It wasn't because that was what was called for every single day, but it was because that's what everyone knew and everyone was able to sing together. that's not necessarily how we do services anymore. We don't just do it based on what we want to do. There is the typicon is called the order. And part of that order is that we rely on our priests to set our direction. As an archdiocese, we rely on our hierarchs to set a direction for how these services are going to be structured, how they will be celebrated. We need to make sure that we're adhering to that. And at some point you might even get caught, because in our case, if I want to start picking and choosing from the typicon, Peter Seymour standing at the chanter stand next to me, telling me that we weren't supposed to do it that way that week. So, you got to be careful what you try to pull off. But all of it is because we are in good order, and God bless Peter for all of the work that he puts in, but also all of the headaches that he gets from people that, might have a typicon in hand and decide, oh, now I am, the word in Greek is typikondes, which is the one who is the guardian of the typicon, who makes sure that they set what's going on. Everyone thinks they're one just because they buy it.
Well,
Anyway.
definitely, like you said, Greg. I mean, in no way now we're telling to try to offer this kind of education to people so they can go to their priest and say, you did this and how dare you, it doesn't follow. You know what I mean? Definitely not.
Or I went to a 2-hour session on a Tuesday night with these two guys talking about this stuff. So now I'm going to tell you how we're going to be doing the services. That's not our goal at all. But to let us all know what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it. Because, the church gives us such beauty. The last slide that we want to talk about before we look, is really something that I asked if I could include, because it's a beautiful thing, but we need to not get stuck. And what I mean by that is, I want to look at the Nasser book, and the movement and the progression of going from St. Raphael to the 5-pounder. So on the left, you see the book in Arabic that was put together by St. Raphael. Now, we all know the history. St. Raphael came to the United States in 1895. He started churches all across, the United States, and they didn't have service books. They weren't able to bring many of them, the books that they needed for these services. So what he put together is this Arabic book that many of our churches probably still have sitting on a shelf, that put together so many of these other books. There's a section that is a horologian. There's a section that's an eratikon or evhologian. There's a section that is an apostolos. There's a section that's an evangelion. There's also a miniature octoikos. There's an abbreviated Manean. There's an abbreviated Triodion, and there's an abbreviated Pentecostarian. And it has everything that you need to put together services on Sundays. In 1936, Father Seraphim Nasser, along with a bunch of old ladies in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, they published the Divine Prayers and Services. And it was a translation of the St. Raphael book that put all of these things together. So it has so many of these same elements. The translations might not be great, but that's the English they used in 1936. So while we respect all of this history and we, see all of these things and are excited, they were things that were done at a time out of necessity. And we're very blessed now that we are not in that same necessity. And we are able to move forward from that and go beyond just the while it was monumental work at the time, it was never intended to be an end all and be all. And as we are now blessed in this country to have so many more books in English, so many more books that are able to be readily available, whether online or, we had Divine Liturgy last Friday morning at our parish here in Phoenix for St. Moses the Ethiopian. And I was lazy and I didn't feel like going to the narthex to grab the epistle book. I'll freely admit it was lazy. And I had my iPad there and I just did a quick Google search for Prokimenon of the day. And it showed me a whole list online of all the Prokimenon for every day of the week, at Vespers, at the epistle, at the Alleluia verses, and at the communion hymns, and showed me everything. What would it be, and how do we sing it? I mean, we have so many things readily at our disposal. Let's not get so tied down to being so obsessed with history that we can't appreciate things for what they are, and at the same time move forward from towards things that are now more readily available. And by the way, the 5-pounder is not 5 pounds. It's only about 3.5. So that's basically everything we have. Abuna, unless you have anything to add to that.
What, 3 pounds?
Yeah.
I think, God bless you. We'll get more into like next week, and I mean, in 2 weeks, the second session and the third session, we get more into a little bit more specific about the Vesper service. Again, even if it's, we basically have 2 sessions, 2-hour sessions, but still, it's not going to be very enough, but at least it will put you'll see. We'll give you an idea about like the basic function of these services, and what basically we'll focus on stuff like what are you going to see every single Vespers you have to say. That the tone doesn't change, or it might, it is the same text that it repeats it, it's repeated every single Vespers, but in a different tone, and things that expect them to be different according to the Octoikos, according to the Triodion, according to the Pentecostalion, and these books like this, okay? And we do the same concept basically for Orthros at the same, same thing, okay? But if anybody has any questions, we still have a few minutes, but it's up to
Deacon John, while we're waiting on people to
start like this, just an overview, a general introduction to our liturgical.
You froze for a minute,
Somebody
Abuna.
started to. Oh, I'm not. Yeah. How about now? I can see you.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, somebody was talking, and then they called me Deacon John.
Sorry,
So,
Father John. This is Chris Howard.
No, I'm kidding.
Old habits.
I'm kidding.
It's been 2 whole days, Chris. Come on.
I know. I should be more on top of it. Well, people are coming up with some questions and hopefully getting ready to ask those. I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. As Father John mentioned, this is a 7-part series, and it goes every other week. In those off weeks, so next week and then 3 weeks from now, we have courses on Western music theory. We also, a couple weeks after that, will have a session on tone 1, chanting in tone 1, chanting in tone 5, that were used as part of our virtual SMI. Please check the calendar, because those things are going to be on there. So in addition to this, really exciting series, I know several of us are really looking forward to this specific series, but we do have other things going on as well. One housekeeping thing, if you look at the calendar that we sent out, I mentioned that it was a tentative calendar, and we already have a change on it. So I just wanted to let everybody know that on October the 20th, we are moving pitching from the priest from November to October the 20th. And what we previously had scheduled on October the 20th was helpful hints for healthy voices. That's moving to November the 17th. So October 20th, November 17th, they're basically just flip-flopping those 2 sessions. But as of right now, all the other sessions are as planned. So that was what I have for you.
Can you please send the courses info to all priests as well? Ours is not in the Facebook group, and we may be missing. Oh, I see. Yeah. Honestly, if I can answer, also send the courses. We can definitely try to see it. Well, it's a private group. I don't know how we can share it, because as a clergy, I can share stuff on the clergy archdiocese, the Facebook page of the clergy the Antiochian Archdiocese clergy. But I don't know if I can do that, share something from our private group, the sacred music to them. I don't know if I can.
Father John, I can send you a link to the email that we sent, which has all the information, including the links to each of the Zoom sessions. So I'll forward that to you, and then you can just paste that into their page.
No, that's actually, this is actually a great a point that you brought in, and we've been trying for the last few years to actually try to do things with the clergy, to also offer stuff like this to clergy and to music. But hopefully in the near future, we'll be pushing for more things to do with the clergy when it comes to music, but also when it comes to rubrics and stuff like this, like typical and stuff, and what to chant and what to chant and what not to chant. In the end of the day, I look at it as a clergy, as a priest, you're basically like a general manager, that you don't need to know all the specifics and be micromanaging, and you don't need to know, at least on the music part, you don't need to know like why this one is exactly flat here, or exactly, sharp, or whatever it is. But you need to have an idea why, why is it in this tone? Why it might be in a stichiatic style, etymologic style, stuff like this. That's another, it's another, I don't want to call it battle, but it's another thing that we need to push to, get our clergy to learn more about these things too, God willing. Did I freeze?
No,
Oh, good.
you're still melted.
Anyway, if we don't have any more questions, but send us your questions too. I'm not a questions like, what do you think about these sessions? If anything, we need to do more. If anything, like we want to spend time, more, spend more time on, and things like this, and things that that hey, I didn't get this very well. Can you explain it more? Just to have an idea. Like I said before, we have a job responsibility that to offer you the best we can, but also one hand doesn't clap on its own, like I said before. So we need both hands. We need you're the other hand too. Tell us what you need, but also need, to do a little bit more work too, because we cannot teach you everything, and we still, anyway. But I just want to, I don't want to keep talking now. And now I'm a priest. I feel like I have to say things all the time. Like I don't need to. I just need to like shush, and that's it. But pray for us, and whatever we can help, that's what we're here for. From from our chairperson, from Marina down, God bless her. She's doing the best she can to offer as many sessions, and God bless her. She's always busy trying to come up with ideas and things like this. So it's our duty, our responsibility too, of course. But we appreciate, her work and her leadership. Anyway,
Thank
anything
you.
else?
I want to say thank you for everyone who's joined us. I hope that you'll pass on the word, let people know that these are happening. Share the email and let people know that this is going on, so that it can be outside of the VSMI folks that we got a chance to talk to. So spread the word amongst your friends and your churches, and it can be even in other archdioceses. That's okay too. But we're so happy to have you, and congratulations again, Father John. We're so excited for your new position. Axios. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Chris, do you have anything else you want to share with us?
No, I would just like to say thank you again to our presenters. Just reminder to register ahead for the sessions. Just makes it nice and quick and easy when you're coming in for these sessions, in the evening of the presentation. And it also allows us to plan ahead, because we know how many people are coming, and gives us just a better idea. So go ahead and register for those. Sorry, there's not one registration for every session, so that's kind of a pain. But at least for the sessions that are a part of a series, you can register once and then select which sessions in that series you're going to attend. So at least that does make it a little easier. Again, thank you, Father John. Thank you, Greg. Thank you to everybody who is participating. And we look forward to seeing you guys again here next week for Western Music Theory 101. So that's beginner Western Music Theory for those of you who don't keep track of those numbers. And then the week after that, we'll be back here. So 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be back with Father John and Greg for Vespers, the first part of Vespers. So thank you all again.
Chris, there is a question down in the chat. Someone would like to ask a question.
April, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
It's not related to this, but if you're willing to hear, I'd really love to ask it.
We're willing to hear, and we'll see if we can answer.
Okay. So if there's a hymn that is not assigned a tone, like say, cherubic hymn, anaphora, it is truly me, whatever, if it's not assigned a tone, is it done in the tone of the week?
Traditionally, yes. Traditionally, yes. When I say traditionally, it's like not like tradition as if like somehow some like Holy Spirit somehow. It just it became like if you're in this week, that doesn't mean you should. Sometimes that might require people who are very fluent in different all these tones and things like this. The home parish that I used to chant at when I was in Lebanon, I just taught my choir 2, I think, or 3 tones of the cherubic hymn and the anaphora, and we just every Sunday or every liturgy we just take we just use them. I never followed this kind of like 8 tones thing because I didn't want people to like
You're breaking up, Father.
every time there's something different, because even in the there's not only how about now? Probably. Can you hear me now?
Better.
So basically, there is no one version like of tone one cherubic hymn. There are hundreds of them. Like where do you draw the line in the end of the day? You know what I mean? I don't know if you heard me this part, but back when I was the chant, choir director in my home parish in Lebanon, we learned 2, 3. We learned 1 in tone 1, 1 in tone 8, and 1 in tone 8, even on like a shorter one. And that was it. All my choir members, or 90% of my choir members, were excellent chanters. But we didn't want to like, hey, today I'm going to do this one, and next week this one, and next one this. I think see what is more appropriate. Have people kind of like try to chant with you, especially if there are other people chanting with you.
If I could also jump in there too, it depends. I mean, for me, and I think this is a pretty standard procedure, because I have a 4-part choir, but I try to keep, if I'm doing, if we're sort of in a penitential time, I'm going to choose more minor sounding music than I am if I'm in a joyous time. If it's nativity and we've already celebrated, I'm going to probably do more joyous major types of music than I am minor music, just because when you're in 4-part, you don't necessarily know if you're going to be in tone 1 or 4 or whatever, because a lot of times we're using Russian style music.
Personally, if I may add too, like I try to have it all kind of flow in a way that will work.
Definitely.
So whether I'm directing a 4-part choir or chanting liturgy by myself or chanting with a Byzantine choir, I want to try to have it all kind of match. So if I'm going to do the cherubic hymn that day in, tone 8, I'm going to try to use a tone 8 anaphora and a tone 8 It Is Truly Meet, or tone 3 across the board. If if I have people chanting with me, that aren't familiar with the music, I'm going to try to default to the music that they're familiar with and still keep it in a way that is, you know, I don't want to say end product because it's not a performance, but in a way that is not detracting from the service so that people are able to participate in. If I'm going to sing the Bortniansky number 7, I'm going to use the big Russian anaphora setting because tonally they go well together, and then they flow nicely into the It Is Truly Me. If I'm going to use the Mina anaphora, I'm going to try to find something that's kind of more in a minor key, or at least in a relative major to that minor key, so that they complement each other. Because those are mainly the two sections of the liturgy that not only come back to back, but where we have the most variety as far as options for music go. So for me, my overall goal is, because I'm, as my wife could tell you, very OCD, is that everything kind of fits together and works together so that we have kind of just a seamless kind of thing going.
And if you didn't understand what he was talking about, major and minor and relative major and all of that, come to Music Theory 102, because that's what we're going to be talking about, is key signatures and relative major and relative minor and all that stuff, because all of this stuff connects together.
Yeah.
Okay.
I teed that one up for you, Marina.
Thank you. I was so appreciative. It was like handed it to me.
She's also going to talk about the circle of fifths.
Yes, I am. All right, cool.
Well, thank you all for being with us.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody. Jamila, it's good to see you. All right. Bye,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. And thank you, Chris, for all of your work to
Thank
get
you,
this
Chris.
going.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.